Hello and welcome to In Focus SoCal. I'm Tanya McRae. Today we're coming to you from Watts, where 56 years ago the community and most of South Los Angeles erupted in 6 days of urban rebellion. The Watts Riots broke out on August 11, 1965, after police pulled over a young black man named Marquette Fry for reckless driving. The situation escalated when Fry failed a sobriety test and resisted arrest. His mother, who arrived at the scene, jumped onto an officer's back, and according to a state report, Fry was struck in the head by an officer's baton. Fry and his family were detained, and witnesses said the arrests highlighted the type of police misconduct that was pervasive in the community. The riots resulted in 34 deaths, over 3,400 arrests, and $40 million in property damage as fires and vandalism were reported across South Los Angeles. A commission that investigated the rebellion made recommendations to address long-standing social and economic issues in the neighborhood, but most of these measures were never implemented. I took a tour of Watts with one activist who is still fighting for his community, one issue at a time. The neighborhood of Watts has the unique distinction of being well known for one of the most deadly and destructive clashes between police and civilians in American history, while also being home to one of the most famous sculptures in the country. In an effort to get a sense of the Watts community, I spent time with Tim Watkins. He has lived in Watts his entire life. His father, Ted Watkins, founded the Watts Labor Community Action Coalition, known as WLCAC, in 1965, just months before the events that changed Los Angeles history. Historically, it's generally called the Watts Riots, but you make the distinction of calling it the Los Angeles Riots and the Watts Revolt. What's that distinction for you mean?
The distinction is that everyone from the governor to the mayor of Los Angeles at the time referred to it as the Los Angeles Riots because it encompassed all of Los Angeles. People that were in Watts declared that it was a revolt, that they were rebelling against police brutality. Riot is what we had in '92. In 1992, there was no sense of nationalism. There wasn't a sense of black pride.
Why was the name changed?
Because the tourism industry was suffering. The statistics from that period will show that visitorship was plummeting because there was a perception that Los Angeles was not safe to visit. It took 2 years for Tom Bradley to come in and change the title, the label, to the Watts Riots. It was the Los Angeles Riots. And people can feel safe traveling from around the world to get to Los Angeles, and everything will be fine as long as they keep their ass out of Watts.
56 years after WLCAC was created, Tim continues the work his father started.
I'm not trying to fill my father's shoes. I'm not trying to follow in his footsteps. My promise was to extend his legacy.
Tim says the Watts Rebellion was the result of continuing dissatisfaction about substandard living conditions, poverty, joblessness, and long-standing tension between police and black residents, all of which he says still exist in Watts today. Your father was concerned about residents in Watts being starved for resources, and that was part of creating WLCAC. What services are you offering to people now?
The same ones he did. Homeless services, senior services, after-school programs for youth, housing, and low-income, very affordable housing, transportation, job training and development.
Tim walked me through the many rooms and halls of WLCAC.
In the 1960s, we had the Panthers and Dr. Martin Luther King's movement, Cesar Chavez with farm workers. Of the four groups, WLCAC was probably the least visible, but we were all working toward the same end, better quality of life for underserved communities and people.
The neighborhood is internationally known for their landmark Watts Towers, built by Italian immigrant Simon Radia between 1921 and 1954. But Tim says the historic and cultural monument should be a much bigger draw.
The Watts Towers themselves, in many circles, are referred to as the eighth wonder of the world. And as such, hundreds of thousands of people come every year, but they don't stay. There's no hospitality setup. There's no preparedness for those visitors. So they come, and if they came with $100 in their pocket, they leave with $100 in their pocket.
The historic Watts train station was built in 1904 and was the only building that remained intact along 103rd Street after the rebellion in '65. A proposed greenbelt area called the Cultural Crescent between the station and the Watts Towers has been a major area of contention, as plans to build either a park or high-rise apartments on that ground have been stalled for decades.
I want the city of Los Angeles to keep its promise to the people of Watts to create a passive park, or you could call it a connecting park from the train station to the towers. And who knows what all opportunities that provides in terms of local commerce, entrepreneurs, food, art, what have you. We think that we deserve to have a say about what ends up happening.
Some other places of interest are the Watts Towers Art Center, as well as the Mafundi Institute, where Black art, culture, and activism have flourished since 1969. Jordan Downs, one of 4 huge housing complexes in Watts, is in the midst of a $1 billion redevelopment. But Tim says while the project is expected to create more green space and retail stores, it is also creating animosity between gangs, or domestic rivals as he calls them.
They need to do something for all of the developments while they're doing Jordan Downs, so that you're not fueling the rivalries. You're not pointing out that if you live in Jordan Downs, you're getting $1 billion worth of improvements, you get a new shopping center, you got a Starbucks, and you got more police than you ever needed, while Imperial Courts and Nickerson Gardens suffer the indignity of having its resources constantly cut back.
In 2019, the U.S. Department of Agriculture declared Watts a food desert, but WLCAC is in the process of opening Mudtown farms.
We've built an urban green space, we call it an educational farm space, that will teach people how to buy, grow, prepare food that will relieve their dependency on synthetic medications.
Finding ways to help the community he has lived in his entire life thrive and prosper is Tim's ultimate goal. The population of Watts is now more Latino than Black, but Tim says the people in this community are bound together more by their similarities than their differences.
It's an extremely hopeful place. And never mind what the demographics are, you're still talking about people that struggle side by side in pursuit of a better way of life.